and would create enormous distortions, including giving the very far right a massive foothold, as we've seen in France. And secondly, the notion that you were discussing about the quad, i.e. 4 people effectively running government. This is the rubbish that came out of the Institute for Government, the think tank. And as someone who studied politics, who teaches politics, and practiced it in cabinet for 8 years, I think it would be a massive mistake to exclude the Foreign Secretary and the Home Secretary from that. In other words, to have a 2-tier cabinet. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. And then to say, good luck, Keir. We'll all be backing in to make this work.
I'm glad you got that off your chest. I'm interested in unpacking both of those points, actually. Firstly, on the idea of a quad. You know, you are someone you've experienced government. You've known what it's been like in the new Labour years. What would your advice be to Sir Keir Starmer now? Because let's be honest, he's got a difficult inheritance, he's got a cynical electorate, and he's got a party that is not used to being in power.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. I think the numbers of very new MPs and making sure they feel that they've got a part to play will be a substantial challenge over the months ahead. Bearing in mind that the pool he's drawing from in terms of all ministerial posts, paid posts, is something like half those remaining from before the election, because quite a lot of people stood down. There were 206 seats we held, quite a lot stood down, and therefore there will be quite a lot of new members looking to preferment, some of them returning, having been defeated in 2019. So I think there's going to be some personnel, if you like, human resource challenges. I think there's going to be challenges in terms of getting the momentum and the
Downing Street
back into government.
New Prime Minister entered
to be done overnight. And thirdly, please, whether
live from Downing Street, number 10.
All decisions going up through Downing Street, absolute garbage.
So Labour prices
One
812
who
seat.
I respect greatly and used to work 18 hours, 7 days a week.
Opposite party
tried
base
it,
121.
Things
Labour
blocked
412.
up. There was a massive logjam.
And
in
Lib
decision
Dem
making.
71.
He's not going to seek my advice on this, but if he did, I would say to Keir, it's time now to let go of the reins a bit.
Others say I say
Appoint the
35.
cabinet and then let them get on with it, and they can make decisions within the parameters that you've laid down, and stick to your promise to decentralise, so that everything doesn't have to go through Whitehall and Westminster. And if we don't do that, then I think we'll ground to a standstill, which would be catastrophic.
I just want to unpick as well the first part of your answer too, about the voting system, because I guess there will be some people who look at this result and think Labour have got a stonking great majority when only around 1 in 5 people voted for them. Reform has to get 1 million votes to get every MP over the line. Is there a risk that, I guess, there's a public who feel unrepresented in the Parliament that they've ended up with?
Well, there is if we don't fulfil the promise made in Downing Street a couple of hours ago by Keir Starmer, and that we would reach out way beyond the 35% that we got in terms of our percentage of the vote, and to make people feel as though the government is about and for them, rather than just an elite. And I think Nigel Farage will be quite dangerous. I think we will be in the same danger that has been experienced across countries in the European Union. And I think we've got to avoid that in every way we can, which is why decentralising, flexing government, energising and renewing that commitment will be really important.
Okay,
but
thank you.
In the end, the people got what they wanted. They wanted to get rid of the present government, the past government, and they got rid of them.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Always so interesting to talk to you, Lord Blunkett there.
Thank you.
Well, we've got all eyes, of course, on Downing Street. I think we can see Sam Coates, actually, in the bottom right of your screens. Sam, we're going to come to you now. We've got Angela Rayner, of course, behind that door in number 10. Has there been any more movement?
We are expecting in a matter of minutes, potentially a matter of, could be just a few seconds, that the second person to walk down the street is going to arrive, and that, we believe, will be Rachel Reeves, who will make the journey down Downing Street in order to become the first ever female Chancellor. We were notified that it was imminent. That notification proved a little
First
off last
Ladies
time. We had to
Chancellor.
wait a couple of minutes. But Rachel Reeves, who has been at Keir Starmer's side all the way through this election, is a fundamental cornerstone was a fundamental cornerstone of the election campaign, was core and key to his promise to keep the public finances under control, to put to bed fears that Labour would tax and spend in a way that the public so often have feared in the past and denied Labour the chance to govern. Rachel Reeves, at times who cuts an austere figure, has been that stern shadow chancellor at his side. We are waiting some movement, but no, that is not Rachel Reeves yet. Rachel Reeves, who is 45, she's from South East London, but now representing a Leeds seat, has had a long career in public service. Not all that time as a politician. She was MP from 2010, but before then, of course, famously, because she told us over and over on the campaign trail, she worked for the first few years of her career out of university as an economist for the Bank of England. And we have somebody else coming up the street. This is a surprise. It is Pat McFadden. Here we have another man who you will have seen day in, day out on the campaign trail. He's not necessarily as much of a household name, but he's a veteran advisor to Tony Blair. He worked with Gordon Brown, and he now looks to be appointed to one of the biggest jobs in Keir Starmer. Pat McFadden, what job are you going to get? Pat McFadden, who is one of the veterans of campaigning. He was close to Tony Blair, inside Tony Blair's Downing Street, right back from 1997, then transitioning into frontline politics, but always keeping quite a low-key role. The man that you can see on the screen there, he held the job of Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Actually, his real role was to be the public face of the campaign, and together with his wife, the husband and wife couple, were running the Labour campaign from Labour HQ. A Glaswegian, he's 59 years old. Through the Gordon Brown years, he held ministerial positions, so he's one of the few people in this cabinet that's being appointed with big experience. I have to say, we were told it was going to be Rachel Reeves next. It wasn't. Pat McFadden. The significance of him, Sophie, I'll just finish on this. The significance of him is we understand there's going to be this quad. Pat McFadden, Rachel Reeves, Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer. Those four are understood, certainly we understood this in the last few days, understood to be the key decision makers at the heart of Keir Starmer's government, probably alongside his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray. So a vital position, but we are still waiting for Rachel Reeves.
Interesting stuff. We'll come back to you as soon as we get a glimpse of any more movement. But as Sam was just saying, Pat McFadden, surprisingly perhaps the second person to
সাংবাদিক ভাইদের
walk
ঘুম
up
নাই
that street. Really, he's kind of Keir Starmer's
দিন
Mr.
রাত 24 ঘন্টা নিউজ
Fix-It, the
করতেছে
most influential politician you never heard of, as Adam's saying there.
That's his job. I mean, he's probably going to be Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. He's going to be in the Cabinet Office. And they have already constructed this quad where effectively you've got the Prime Minister, then the Deputy Prime Minister, but then on the organisational side you've got Pat McFadden and also, and he'll be working of course with Sue Gray.
We're going to take you to Nigel Farage, who's speaking now.
Where are you from? Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Are you downwind of a couple already? You've had a bigger lunch than I've had. Okay, he must be screaming. He's absolutely steaming, isn't he? That's all right. There's still plenty of beer left in the pub, mate. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye. Lots of love. Lots of love.
নাইজেল ওয়ারাসে রেসি
As I was saying. As I was saying, on the 3rd of June, I decided that I would not. I decided that I would not. Boring! 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 Well, this is good preparation for the House of Commons, I suppose, isn't it? Very good preparation. It's going to be very lively in there, isn't it? Oh, do buck up, really, please, love. I'm so sorry. Wow, I'm enjoying this.
Well, you can see there Nigel Farage really struggling to get started at his speech there. You've had a bigger lunch than I have, just one of the comebacks he used there, as a string of hecklers had to be ejected from that speech in central London. We will go back to that, of course, as soon as Nigel Farage manages to get underway. It was good preparation for the House of Commons. To return to the cabinet appointments, Angela Rayner, Pat McFadden, change of plan. He's managed to start talking. Let's listen.
You're very angry. Oh dear. Listen, mate, you'll have a stroke. You'll have a stroke. You'll do yourself a nasty, mate, honestly. You'll have a stroke if you go on like this. Yeah. Well, we'll find out later whether they're actors and whether they worked in conjunction with Channel 4. Sorry. Of course. No, this can go on for hours. I'm fine. No problem at all. Yeah. As I say, they may well be actors. They may well be actors. We've seen this before, but Channel 4, of course, had absolutely nothing to do with it whatsoever. Oh, the anger. The anger. Well, at least they're showing their anger in public. The political establishment are in fear in private as to what happened last night with those results in the elections. And I said on the 3rd of June, in Parliament. And you can see there are 4 of us up here now as we bite our nails with what is going on in Basildon and Thurrock right now, where our candidate, James McMurdoch, on the first count was ahead by 120 votes. On the second count was ahead again, and there is a full recount taking place as I speak. So I'm very hopeful, it won't be 4, I'm very hopeful that it will be 5 within the space of the next couple of hours. Now, the results show us very interesting things. If we had proportional representation, we'd be looking at nearly 100 seats. But equally, first past the post inverts the other way, where Labour get almost the same number of votes they got, well, in fact, fewer votes they got under Corbyn, and yet 200 more seats. It is very much my view that our outdated first past the post electoral system is not fit for purpose, and we will campaign with anyone and everyone to change this electoral system. That certainly we'll be doing, and we'll make those arguments in Parliament as quickly as we can. The results show there is absolutely no enthusiasm for Starmer's Labour whatsoever. And it was interesting to watch Starmer speak outside number 10, his first Prime Ministerial address, having been to see the King. And you know, in the course of that speech, he looked down at his notes over 150 times. Once every 2.8 seconds. Now, I don't think these people with me need a script because they know what they believe in. And when it comes to providing the voice of opposition, well, we may be too few in number to necessarily be thought of as the opposition in the House of Commons. But let me promise you something. We are going to be the opposition around the country. We are all committed to working for our constituents. We are all committed to doing the best we can in Parliament. But above all, what we are going to do from today is we are going to professionalise the party. We are going to democratise the party, and those few bad apples that have crept in will be gone, will be long gone, and we will never have any of their type back in our organisation. You have the 100% promise on that. What is remarkable is the energy and enthusiasm of those that have come to us over the course of the last few weeks. They were voting with passion. We organised meetings around the country at 24 hours notice. The venues were all full. This energy and optimism is being reflected today as one member of the public every minute joins the party. A member a minute is joining the party as we speak. And it really is my aim.
We're going to break away from that momentarily because we can see Rachel Reeves now walking down the streets of Downing Street. Rachel Reeves, they're expected to become the first female Chancellor in the 803-year history of that role. Of course, someone who's been right by Sir Keir Starmer throughout the
Rachel
campaign.
Reeves arrives at number
Sam
10.
Coates, a deputy Prime there.
First
in
female
Downing Street
chancellor
as Rachel
hoche
Reeves. Try
Mahila.
not to smile too much, I think, as she walks up to the door of number 10.
That's the face of somebody who has one of the toughest jobs in government. Rachel Reeves, 45-year-old, Leeds MP, Shadow Chancellor from 2021, walking into number 10 to take, we believe, the position of Chancellor of the Exchequer, the first Chancellor, female Chancellor, as you were just saying, since 1221, Sophie. That is a moment that she talked about looking forward to in the campaign, and it seems as if it has finally arrived. And with her entry into number 10, we now have the top 4 most senior people in Keir Starmer's government, including himself now, having gone in the black door behind me.
Rachel Reeves there entering number 10, as you were saying, Sam. She, of course, has been in Parliament for quite some time now, the MP for Leeds West and Pudsey, formerly working at the Bank of England as well. I think, I've got the camera on the gate, Sam, and I feel like I can just see West Streeting there, potentially Shabana Mahmood as well.
I can see Shabana Mahmood there, just at the gate of Downing Street. Probably one of the most relieved members of cabinet members in just a few moments. Here she comes. Not necessarily again another household name at the moment, but certain will be in the next few months and years. Shabana Mahmood, who was one of the campaign
Oh my God.
until a few months ago.
Shabana.
Then moved to the Shadow
Is she
Justice
Pakistani
portfolio.
ladies
It was
or
far
Indian
from clear that
or
this
Bengali?
prominent Muslim politician was going to be here today because she had a very bitter fight in her Midland seat in order to keep it from a...
She is a Muslim lady. Shabana Muhammad arrives at number 10. Starmer appointment cabinet.
In the early hours this morning, Shabana Mahmood
Show minister hote
won
jacche.
that race Now
Our
she's entering
Asian
into number 10 for what will
leader,
be a prominent cabinet
women's
role.
leader.
A massive moment for her and a massive moment for the people of her constituency. Justice is her primary brief.
कोई हमारे बांग्लादेशी के होते हैं appointment file होना
Shadow financial
सुनलाम
secretary
तो
to the
बांग्लादेशी के
Treasury, very close to
appointment
Keir
पावे
Starmer, one of the
cabinet
key Starmerites. So Keir Starmer appointing absolute allies to the top jobs right now.
And no surprises yet, Sam, are there? No surprises yet. We know, of
Oh,
course,
we let on
the
again,
Central
I'm direct
Mood,
like
we
the
see Rachel
landing
Reeves. I can now see John Healey walking up the street as well. We're expected, of course, to see John Healey being made Defence Secretary, aren't we?
Shabana
That's right,
Muhammad
the Yorkshire
arrives
MP,
at number 10
John Healey.
from our appointment cabinet.
He will be by Keir Starmer's side.
John
so
Healey
much
arrives
of
at
the
number
foreign
10.
visits he's about to do, probably travel
John
with him
Healey.
to Washington next week. For
Purana
NATO,
Rajniti
for
with
John Healey, who was a veteran of the Gordon Brown government, walking up the pavement of Downing Street, likely to become the Defence Secretary, the successor to Grant Shapps, grappling with those foreign wars, Ukraine, what's going on in the Middle East. John Healey, calm temperament and long experience, valued by Keir Starmer as he enters that big black door. One thing notable, Sophie, we haven't yet seen the person we
Muslim
thought
lady
would be Foreign Secretary,
Ekjon
David
Ministry
Lammy.
Stan
If John
Paise.
Healey is Defence Secretary, it does lead you to wonder what's happened to the man who was Shadow Foreign Secretary until today. And we have another face further down the street. I don't know whether the camera can see, but one of the most vociferous, one of the most prominent members of the campaign, Labour's campaign, Wes Streeting, 41-year-old East London MP, self-styled
East London
moderniser.
MP
I think he wouldn't mind me calling
আমরা তো মনে করছিলাম রুশনার আলী আইব
pugnacious members of the shadow cabinet, one of those who loves a fight,
First
first
for it,
became
MP
an MP
Rushnara.
in 2015. When
Is there a
Streeting,
990
he was, until today, the shadow health secretary. Are you about to become the health secretary, Wes Streeting? Are you looking forward to your role in government?
was starting
A
arrives at
swift
number 10.
entrance into number 10. No hesitation there from a man who made his name politically first in the Students' Union and then as an MP. His partner, interestingly enough, just missed out on becoming an MP in the Northeast. So slightly bittersweet day on a personal level for Wes Streeting. But one of those, I think Keir Starmer trusts to deliver public service reform in a big way. The NHS, a key part of the campaign, but the money to fix it.
Ilford'er MP সে Ilford'er
Can Wes Streeting
Ilford North'er MP
square that circle?
Well, last night Wes Streeting was worried about losing his seat in Ilford North. This afternoon, he looks almost certain to be the man in charge of the NHS. It really does show how politics can come at you fast. Just to recap, we have got behind that door in number 10, Rachel Reeves, Pat McFadden, John Healey, Shabana Mahmood, and now Wes Streeting. Angela Rayner, of course, the very first person to walk down that street. No surprises yet, Sam, although you did point out that we haven't yet seen a glimpse of the man who was the Shadow Foreign Secretary, although now, I think, right on time, right on cue, I think I can see David Lammy walking down the street.
That is right, Sophie. Here we have David Lammy walking past the security hut just at the edge of your of the shot.
David Lammy arrives.
A man who has had so many political firsts in his career. He was the youngest MP in the Commons when he was first elected, aged 27 in 2000. He served for 8 years under Blair and Brown.
2000
under Ed Miliband and has been shadow
27
foreign
বছর
secretary.
MP হইছে
Now, will the 51-year-old from Tottenham become foreign secretary? An ally of Barack Obama, first black male to serve to study at Harvard. Will he be the man at Keir Starmer's side overseas, dealing with the many challenge that the foreign policy agenda will bring, not least the possible election of Donald Trump?
we will wait to see. Of course, we have got Big who has gone through the door of number 10, but we don't have any confirmed appointments yet. David Lammy, one of the few people with experience of being in government before in the new Labour years, because of course it is a pretty fresh cabinet that is being appointed here. Labour not been in power for almost 2 decades. The progression up the street continues. I think that's Peter Kyle that we are seeing at the bottom of number 10 right now. It is 3 o'clock. If you are just joining us, we have got all eyes on Downing Street, where Sir Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister, is appointing his cabinet. The next person there awaiting the very carefully choreographed, can't get my words up, this is a sign of being on TV for too long, carefully choreographed arrivals here at Downing Street. Peter Kyle waiting his turn. Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates is there for us. Sam.
The Hove MP, Peter Kyle. Yes, he's been the shadow science minister, the 53-year-old, like Wes Streeting, another person on the modernising wing of the Labour Party. Once upon a time, we would have called it the Blairite wing. Already those factions starting to form, or have been forming in the shadow cabinet. Peter Kyle, nevertheless, a prominent and trusted member of the team, regarded as a good media performer, somebody who can give a good account of himself, and has been alongside Keir Starmer pretty much since he became the Labour leader. Peter Kyle, well, he was a prominent Remainer, a big sort of fighting force during the Brexit wars on behalf of the Remain side, now taking the final few steps up to Downing Street in order to find out his fate and whether he becomes the Science Secretary.
There you go, Peter Kyle arriving in number 10. No surprises so far on the people who've made that walk down the street. Peter Kyle, the latest person to go and see Sir Keir Starmer, who is appointing his first cabinet. We can see at the bottom of Downing Street, Bridget Phillipson there. The Shadow Education Secretary, is she due to take on the all-important role of Education Secretary as well, brought up by a single mum in Washington. She had free school meals at school. Could she now be in charge of
Education Minister, single mom.
To our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates.
Single mom, thanks.
That's right, Bridget Phillipson here, the 40-year-old from Washington in Sunderland, who represents one of the Sunderland seats now. She really has been leading for years now on education on behalf of Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer and Bridget Phillipson putting that decision to levy taxes on private schools in order to fund more teachers at the heart of the election campaign manifesto. A big, broad smile from the woman set, we think, to become Education Secretary with a huge job in front of her. School funding, school reform, the overhaul and a big promise around helping parents in the early years of children's lives. She has a big job but a small budget from which to do it. How will she deal with the teaching years? How will she deal with demands for pay rises? How will she deal with the creaking education infrastructure, leaking schools, and the manifest problems in that system? Big endorsement in the middle of the campaign by one of the big Academy backers and a former Tory donor, Lord Harris, was a big feather in her cap. The question is, will she continue as Education Secretary, and will she be able to deliver the reforms that she has promised through the campaign?
I'm finding it fascinating, Sam, to see the different reactions of people. Some you can see are just full-on beaming, they're happy to be there. Others trying to perhaps keep a more, I guess, professional, muted air, like trying to hold back the smiles. But you can certainly see, I think, the delight on the faces of the cabinet. Many of them, of course, would have been pretty confident, wouldn't they, Sam, I think, to have got the call up. But, of course, there must be a certain degree of relief as well when the call does come.
That's right. I was quite struck by the seriousness of Angela Rayner, and, well, in contrast to Bridget Phillipson, often a very serious figure herself, beaming as she took the final few strides into that black door. Can I point out curiosity, Sophie? I'm not really sure why this is the case, but have you noticed that we have not seen Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper walking up the street yet? Now, ordinarily, you would expect the jobs to be appointed in order of seniority, and we did see that quirk with David Lammy arriving after the person, Shabana Mahmood, who we were expecting to be to be appointed Justice Secretary, but we still haven't seen Yvette Cooper. I've just got one slight arched eyebrow, one slight raised eyebrow, wondering where she is, whether her face. She, of course, is one of our longest-serving figures in politics. She was an advisor in the run-up to 1997, an MP for New Labour in 1997. Her and her husband, Ed Balls, the first husband and wife couple in the cabinet in Gordon Brown's day, and now we had expected her to come in as Home Secretary, tackling the small boats crisis, bringing down immigration levels, which Labour say are too high, but no sign of her. Instead, we have a new name. If you just focus in on the middle of your shot, Sophie, can you see who that is?
Annalise Dodds. I was going to say, Sam, I'm going to let you do the arched eyebrows. The last time I did that, I said David Lammy had been spotted, and then he walked straight into shot, so I've been well behaved. I'm not speculating at all about Yvette Cooper. But you're right, the person that we can see is Annalise Dodds.
That's right. Now, Annalise Dodds, who is just hanging back at the Downing Street gate, has had... I suppose she is at the top table alongside Keir Starmer. She was one of his first big allies, but she started Keir Starmer's tenure as leader of the Labour Party as his shadow chancellor, the biggest, pretty much, or second biggest position around the shadow cabinet table. That is not where she's ended up. In 2021, she was somewhat brutally demoted. The 46-year-old from Aberdeen, the 46-year-old became the shadow cabinet office minister, but she's hanging back because Yvette Cooper's arrived. Just in time, just after we gave her the big sale, she heard our call and she's turned up to put our nerves at rest.
She said, hang on a minute, Sam says there's been... She's saying, Sam's saying on Sky that this has been done in order of seniority, so let me go next.
They all listen. They all listen, Sophie. Quite right too. Yvette Cooper, another one likely to be in the top 5 or 6 most senior jobs in Keir Starmer's government. We're not expecting her to be part of the court, even though she's likely to get a great office of state if she gets the job in government that she's been doing in opposition. One of the cabinet members who has done this walk before. Yvette Cooper did this walk under Gordon Brown when she was Work and Pensions Secretary. Now, is she going to be Home Secretary? She's about to find out her fate, soon to meet Keir Starmer's aides, and then the Prime Minister himself to find out her fate. Sophie.
Again, as you were saying, Sam, one of the relatively few people, I should say, in the New Look cabinet to have government experience already. How important do you think that will be for Sir Keir Starmer as he builds a team around him?
Well, look, I think one of the quirks of Keir Starmer is that he too has government experience, albeit not as a front-rank politician, but from the civil service side. This 55-year-old has extensive operational experience of how the civil service works in the Communities Department and the Work and Pensions Department back from Gordon Brown's era. But, Sophie, let's be honest, the civil service has changed out of recognition since Yvette Cooper was last in government. The challenges have changed out of recognition, and Yvette Cooper has 2 of the most difficult. You've got the overarching challenge of migration, and then within that, the issue that has dogged the Conservatives and will continue to plague a Labour administration, which is the image of those boats coming across the English Channel. So experience, yes, good, if it means she's able to do the job and cause the kind of change that Keir Starmer says he wants to say. Yvette Cooper is one of the faces of Keir Starmer's missions, so she will have more resource, more clout as a result of that. She's not necessarily at the very top table of decision making if this quad structure is what they end up using, but a key figure. She was admired by her colleagues for her grasp of detail. She was feared and to a certain degree disliked by civil servants back in the Gordon Brown days for the way that she dealt with them, but a formidable figure who is somewhat feared as well around the cabinet table, or she was certainly around the shadow cabinet table, for being robust, firm, digging her heels in when she wanted to get something. She will be a big figure in this government, particularly if she ends up in the Home Office brief.
She certainly will. Sam, thank you very much indeed. So a parade of members of the former shadow cabinet entering Downing Street, meeting Sir Keir Starmer, who is not hanging around, who's only made Prime Minister this morning. He is now cracking on and appointing his cabinet team, and he is getting on with it as well. No official appointments yet, but a lot of familiar faces. I've got Alan Bolton with me as well. It feels so far, we don't know the roles yet, to be, I guess, a move of stability from the new Prime Minister.
Yes, which is what we expected, what we were led to believe. We're just getting details of what Sue Gray has been telling the new appointees. Really very unsurprising that she's been telling them that the Prime Minister expects them to concentrate on delivery. So, you know, that will surprise nobody. I do think that, you know, there are possibly some issues if you read the order. People have gone in, possibly people moving around, maybe John Healey be Foreign Secretary, maybe David Lammy be something else. But I know from many years standing outside Downing Street that what you see going through the door hardly ever tells you the story. And we have got those two vacancies of Ashworth and Thagam Debonair. So we will see some surprise faces at some point.
I want to bring in our panel as we wait to see more arrivals. We are joined now by Shami Chakrabarti, the Labour peer, and also Ed Vaser, the former Culture Secretary as well. As you've, I'm sure, had experience of being called up and making the move down Downing Street, how smoothly do you think this one looks like it's going?
Well, I haven't actually, because I just asked for the job that I got and stuck with it for 6 years. I avoided all of that. But it looks like it's been very smooth. They're not even having to go through Downing Street security. And it's all being very carefully choreographed. We're just waiting for the moment when David Cameron comes through in the Land Rover and gets out as the surprise. But Adam, of course, is quite right. There are, as it were, two vacancies in the shadow cabinet, and it'll be interesting to see who he appoints.
In the cabinet?
In the cabinet, yes. Thank you, Jamie. That's a very good point. Getting used to that in the cabinet. And, you know, Douglas Alexander, for example, very experienced former cabinet minister in the Gordon Brown government, is now an MP again. So will he bring in somebody like that straight into the cabinet? And who are the other moves? But, I mean, a lot of it is very predictable. I like the fact that Sam is trying to inject some suspension into it. You know, will she become the Education Secretary? We wait to hear, but most of it is predictable. And I think,
no Ed Miliband yet.
And right, the magic of Sky, Ed Miliband will now appear.
I know, exactly. I'm not falling down.
Through the gate.
I'm not falling
but
down.
I think just objectively, the message of stability and getting on with the job delivery. I'm saying this on behalf of the Labour government. That is what Keir Starmer wants to project, and if it is, that is what he's succeeding in doing.
Shami, Keir Starmer's obviously won this big majority. How important or not do you think it is that he appoints a cabinet that, I guess, reflects all wings of the Labour Party, or does he have licence to do what he likes now?
Well, I think it was important in the tone of his initial remarks that he approached his first communication as Prime Minister with an air of humility. He knows that this is a wonderful, historic achievement and a win in mathematical terms in Parliament, but the voter turnout wasn't great, and he will be thinking, as I am and other people are, that the rise of reform is something to be worried about. And so he addressed people who hadn't voted for him, and that means people who voted for other parties and people who stayed at home. And so I think he will have to bear that in mind, both in the way that he manages this large group of MPs, many of them new, all of them very ambitious, and I listened carefully to what David Blunkett said to you earlier about the sort of HR aspects of that, and also what he projects to the country. We did lose people we didn't expect to lose, including Jonathan Ashworth. There were some surprise results to independence that are attributed to the situation in the Middle East and so on. So I'm sure that will be very much at the forefront of Keir Starmer's mind.
And as you say, 4 in 5 people, of course, didn't vote for him. Important to sort of set the tone, to show, well, he hopes to show that he'll be a prime minister.
He wants to show that he's not crooked. One of the refrains that came, I think, from voters, but also was seized upon by the Labour campaign is it's one rule for them. They're arrogant, they're cocky, they're taking people for granted, and he wants to project the opposite of that, which is I govern for everybody, I want to be uniting, I'm about service and humility and so on.
And we spoke shortly before the election, and you said then you thought it was going to be a difficult night. Did it live up to your expectation? Did it exceed your expectation?
Yeah, why do people say difficult night? I mean, it was an absolute catastrophe. It's a complete and utter car crash. I mean, it's awful. It's really bad. And but what do I cling on to as a kind of silver lining? That there are just enough Tory MPs to form a viable opposition. And weirdly, look at what Labour has achieved since 2019. You know, even in the first past the post system, with savvy voters who know how to tactically vote. There is potentially a route back for the Conservatives. I think the reform issue is a big problem in the north, but equally the Tories have to recognise that Tory voters tactically voted for the Lib Dems, switched to get Tories out because they were fed up with their own party, and the Tory party is going to have to make a very quick decision as to where it points, and obviously I want it to point to the centre. I think that's the only way you win elections in this country. I think reform is a false friend, and the policies they offer is a false friend, but there will be a fight between the likes of Suella Braverman and Tom Tugendhat, with someone like Kemi Badenoch not quite clear which way she will pivot. So that is a big, if the Tories can get this right very quickly, there is a route back.
Who would you be backing then?
They're not a hugely inspiring cast of characters.
That's not the line from Central Office, is it?
They're not an inspiring cast of characters. I like Kemi Badenoch, but she can go off the deep end. She's got this kind of weird obsession with culture wars. I like Tom Tugendhat, but I'm not sure how kind of charismatic and whether he'll cut through. Jeremy Hunt, sheer resilience. My God, holding onto his seat like that. You almost want to give him the leadership as a consolation prize for being.
Viewers আসুন সবাই.
James Cleverly.
I really like James.
Please
Cleverly.
subscribe my channel, viewers.
I'd be quite up for it. I think he did a really good job as Foreign Secretary. Wasn't
Live আসি
he did a good job as
10 Downing Street
I'm just
থেকে.
going to break in because we can see Jonathan Reynolds
sorry.
now walking
10 Downing
down
Street থেকে না,
these
Sky
steps
TV-র সাথে
of
আছি,
Downing
Sky
Street,
News-এর
I
সাথে।
should say. Jonathan Reynolds there, formerly the Shadow
Sky
Business
News-এর
Secretary,
সাথে live
looking for a
দিতেছি।
job in cabinet now. Let's go to Sam Coates, who's standing
10 Downing Street থেকে
That's right. Johnny Reynolds has one of the toughest
তাদের
jobs if
নতুন
he gets
ক্যাবিনেট
the
গঠন
portfolio
করা
in
হচ্ছে।
government
কে
that
কে
he has
আসতেছেন
in
ভালো
opposition
দেখতেছি।
as business secretary, which means
Starmer
that on the
appoints
shoulders
cabinet
of the
Jonathan
43-year-old just walking onto the
Reynolds
pavement
arrives
on
at
Downing
number
Street
10.
and crossing the road to enter the big black door is the job of finding and boosting growth. This man must deliver more investment and therefore more tax revenue in order to fund public services. Can he do it? He is very close to Keir Starmer, a trusted member of his team all the way through since the day Keir Starmer became Labour
নতুন
leader.
ক্যাবিনেট আসছে, দেশের কি হবে না হবে সেটা দেখার জন্য এই লাইভগুলো দিচ্ছে।
As he then turns to go in the
তাদের
door,
ক্যাবিনেট যে কে কে আসলো না আসলো এগুলো একটু
will
দেখতেছি।
Johnny Reynolds become business
সাথে
secretary?
ভিউয়ার্সদেরকেও দেখাচ্ছি।
And I'm going to break in because we have had the
কাজ
first
যদি না থাকতো
official
তো ওই জায়গায় গেলাম না
appointment.
লাইভ।
The press statement
দেখার
from
জন্য।
number 10 Downing Street. The King has been pleased to approve the appointment of the Right Honourable Angela Rayner as Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. She will also be Deputy Prime Minister. So that the first official news. She was the first person, of course, through the door of number 10, Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, but the key appointment, Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. Sam.
Levelling Up survives. Now that's a little bit of a turn up for a book. A Boris Johnson moniker that didn't exist before he came along has now made it into government as Angela Rayner becomes Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, as well as Deputy Prime Minister. So that is a big portfolio for an important member of Keir Starmer's top team. There is a sense that Angela Rayner will be prepared to use her political clout and her political talents to make sure she can shape this government in the way that she wants. She had at points a difficult relationship with Keir Starmer. In 2021, a reshuffle where he tried to demote her, one of the toughest moments of Keir Starmer's premiership. But since then, she won that battle, by the way, and remained with the roles and the titles that she wanted. This 44-year-old that you can see on the screen has managed to claw back influence and claw back, it would seem, the respect of the leader himself. He has decided to bring her firmly into the tent. That's what the announcement in the last minute confers. Deputy Prime Minister, a job title that Keir Starmer didn't have to give her, alongside Levelling Up Secretary, a title that I'm surprised has survived, puts her in charge of making people's lives better, as well as deputising for the Prime Minister. An absolutely fundamental role in the government that's being formed today.
In some ways, one of the very first decisions of the new Prime Minister to keep the Department of Levelling Up and to put Deputy Prime Minister in charge of it as well. Let's bring in Shami, shall we? What do you make of the actions of Keir Starmer so far?
Well, I think that's a very canny announcement to make first. Angela Rayner is the kind of politician who reaches places others cannot reach, to coin a phrase that I think Margaret Thatcher once used of Peter Carrington or something. There are people who hear Angela and don't hear other politicians because of her unique voice, her backstory and so on. Housing, crucially important. On your point about preserving the Department for Levelling Up, I think there's something to be said for not doing endless machinery of government changes in the way that some governments do. Let's change the nameplates on the department. You know, a lot of that is a distraction from actually delivering on policy. Housing, crucially important to the missions and the promises that are being made. I'd be interested in that particular brief whether Angela still keeps her influence over workplace reforms and the influence over things like abolishing zero-hour contracts and so on, because that is a part of her previous brief that it was very important to her, very important to the trade union. So I'm not quite clear whether that it is still within the brief we've just heard, but very good news that she is there as the first announcement.
And Keir Starmer really ripping through this as well. 12 arrivals we've had of the new-lit cabinet in Downing Street in just 47 minutes.
I mean, I haven't done any read across from the shadow cabinet to the cabinet, but one of the things that the Tories did, which I thought was a huge mistake, was basically every single person in Parliament was a member of the cabinet. I mean, I think at one point you had sort of 38 people sitting around the cabinet table. There were all these people attending cabinet.
এরা এত নিউজ পড়ে গেলে দিন রাত 24 ঘন্টা এই ঘুম নাই ঘুমাইলো কোন বালা দিন রাত পড়ে রইছে নিউজ পড়ার দায়
and there was cabinet discussion.
And also incentives for people for the future. Yeah. If everybody starts at the top table, the only way is down.
Ed, can I ask how today's felt? Because it just watching.
Mantri, MP, Minister, her to gum nai.
At number 10, seeing now people that were used to saying on the shadow cabinet, looking through
24 ঘন্টা ধরে লাইভ করে।
How does it feel after so many years to see Labour in there?
It's not felt great. I mean, it's felt much worse than I thought it would, because obviously, weirdly, I've been thinking about, is politics going to kind of realign in some way between Brexiteers and Remainers in a kind of very, very broad brush kind of way, like protectionists versus globalists or whatever, almost back to sort of 19th century politics, if you like. And so I've been quite free and easy in kind of taking a pop at the Tory party for the last 2 or 3 years, because it's basically been run by Brexiteers who I blame not only for damaging our country, but really damaging my party, and a party that I've worked for since I was 16. So I have been kind of very free and easy in my criticism. I get a lot of pushback for it, you're not really a Tory or whatever. But when you see it actually happen, it is fairly devastating. It's happening to my generation. It's happening to a lot of MPs who I came into Parliament with, who have lost their seats. So that's very, very sad. But it's also terrible to see my party on its knees. And also, you do want to play a role in trying to put it back up. In '97, even though I wasn't an MP, I played a role in trying to tell the Tory party, please love your country as it is today, rather than the country you imagine it was in the 1950s. I hope they will do that again this time.
Just happening in your old constituency as well. I mean, no Conservatives in Oxfordshire, for example.
Yeah, Oxfordshire on yellow and red, and Didcot and Wantage. You know, some of the talent that's been lost, Rupert Harrison, who was the candidate in Bicester, George Osborne's economic advisor, who would have been a very important talent in Parliament if he had got elected, didn't get elected. My old constituency, Didcot and Wantage, you know, didn't even go Liberal in the '97 landslide.
I felt for Robert Buckland actually.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was early on in the night in Swindon, and I think that his very passionate speech from a guy who's not a shouty politician at all. Yeah. I have a lot of time for Robert Buckland as a kind of rule of law, one nation conservative who cares about things like the Convention on Human Rights. He issued a real warning to his colleagues to end the circus, as he described it. Then, of course, not long later, you had Suella Braverman's response. So we begin to see this battle developing for the soul of the British Conservative Party.
Can I ask you the same question as well? Because I think it's fair to say that you're probably not, a natural kind of bedfellow in many ways in the Labour movement is Keir Starmer when it comes to where you position yourself. Maybe that's unfair. You might not feel that way. But how do you feel about seeing him on the steps of Number 10?
I thought that the speech was very impressive. As I said earlier, it was really good to hear that humility, and I think it came across as very sincere. Service, understanding that not everybody voted for us. He didn't say it explicitly, but he will know that the turnout wasn't great. So it's a fabulous majority in parliamentary terms, but not a fabulous turnout. And to talk about service, to seek unity, to say that he was especially addressing people who hadn't voted Labour, I thought that was very heartening and very impressive for a Prime Minister of any stripe with such a massive majority who really use that humbly.
It's interesting you mentioned because of course there we've got a retrade coming back in
Prime Minister
who's someone you might well expect to see in a Labour government at some point. But I did want to ask you what you think Jeremy Corbyn is going to do in this Parliament. I mean, there is almost a sort of faction now of pro-Palestinians around him. I mean, how do you think he's going to conduct himself?
Well, obviously, for some time, your colleagues in journalism have been trying to assess to what extent that conflict was going to affect particularly Labour in relation to messaging in the past, and the messaging did move on, but I think most would accept that there were some slips earlier on. I think it ought to be easier in government than it was in opposition. At times, I think it was particularly hard to be in opposition, but with lots of people who, of course, care about human rights and care about conflicts in the world, to be perhaps under greater scrutiny even than the government. Well, now you're in the government and you have a potential opportunity to get the messaging right and to actually have some influence rather than just be punished for things you have actually relatively little direct diplomatic influence over.
I mean, I guess the other thing, we're talking about kind of independence entering Parliament. For MPs to reform, they're hoping for a fifth with a recount in Basildon, and how much an influence do you think that's going to have?
Well, don't forget, obviously, the Greens have also got 4 MPs, so it's a pattern, isn't it? And the 4 independents as well, it's a pattern of voters going to fringe parties sounds pejorative, but the non-mainstream parties. And that may be something that is developing. But as I say, what you have with reform is, for me, a real crisis for the Conservative Party. To physically have them in the House of Commons, to have someone like Nigel Farage, who is
সাইজন বাঙালির মধ্যে একজন হয়েছিল ক্যাবিনেট অপারেশন শুনলাম রুশনারা ওই রুশনারা তো আসলো না টিউলিপও আসলো না
this morning, and he's very thoughtful about this. He thinks, funny enough, that Nigel Farage will split with his 3 colleagues very quickly. That reform has to come to the Conservative Party as much as the Tories come to reform and so on. So it's up in the air.
I'm going to break in because we've had our second official appointment that has been made. The King, we're told by Downing Street, has been pleased to approve the appointment of the Right Honourable Rachel Reeves MP as Chancellor of the Exchequer. No surprises there, but confirmation that Rachel Reeves has become the new Chancellor of the Exchequer. Worth pointing out.
More women than ever, and there's regional diversity. Labour has done well in all of in England, Scotland, and Wales. But no, that's an important first to have a woman Chancellor of the Exchequer.
I think we can cross to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, who's in Downing Street. I can see Ed Miliband starting the walk up the street, Sam.
This is a walk that he will have wanted to do. He perhaps would have wanted to do it in different circumstances. The Labour Party leader between 2010 and 2015 could have been Prime Minister, but lost the 2015 election. But in many ways was responsible for Keir Starmer's entry into politics. Now Ed Miliband walking up the street.
Ed Miliband, oh.
The shadow climate secretary. Climate is his passion. He might be the first cabinet minister to return to the same job he did in the last government. Let's see whether Ed Miliband, 54-year-old figure who was by Gordon Brown's side for all the years of New Labour, ran the Labour Party for years but took it down to defeat in 2015, and now has been shadow climate secretary under Keir Starmer, pushing the climate agenda, but being forced to retreat somewhat over that £28 billion investment promised every year, which got scaled back in March of this year. Now walking into number 10, will he become the climate secretary as we believe?
And Sam, Keir Starmer's really rattling through the appointments here. It's making me realise, and I guess just kind of reflect on the fact of how organised this Labour Party is, whether it is the efficiency of the campaign that won so many seats, really maximised the votes in the right places to be the most efficient, and then also, of course, they were ready for the election when Rishi Sunak called it, and it feels like this is a man who is ready to appoint his cabinet as well.
Oh, I completely agree with you, Sophie. Although you could apply a slightly more cynical spin to it. It's quite hard to do a reshuffle when you're already in government and there are lots of plates spinning, and quite frankly, if there's a reshuffle, often some of them smashing at the same time. Labour has had this time to plan, and it's a little bit easier, if we're being honest, if your cabinet appointments mirror, 90% of them mirror the shadow cabinet appointments and the jobs that those people were in this morning. So yes, rattling through it. What's interesting is they go in and we don't know what the job is, and then we're being informed largely on social media when the appointment is confirmed, and we've only had 2 such appointments confirmed, Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves. I think we've had well over half of the likely cabinet now go in, so the question is, who are going to be the new names? Who are going to be the new faces to replace Bangor Debonair and Jonathan Ashworth, who will get cabinet seats, perhaps unexpectedly? And will everybody get the jobs that we are expecting that mirrored what they had in opposition? Those are the massive questions now of British politics. The answers, well, they know in the building behind me, and we'll find out soon enough.
No surprises yet. Sam, thank you very much indeed. We'll go straight back to you as soon as we see any more movement on that street. No surprises so far.
Viewers, please subscribe my channel.
They don't know who's going to get jobs. It's always possible that can't call it a reshuffle because the pack's only been dealt out for the first time, but there could be some changes in jobs. But I mean, interesting seeing Ed Miliband there. We were hearing earlier on from Tom Baldwin how Keir Starmer was quite happy to drop or demote his brief for the Green Revolution at the same time as they're both close friends. I mean, they live in a couple of blocks of each other in Kentish Town and spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, that's me as well, that kind of like ruthlessness, the kind of single-mindedness that it does feel like is part of Keir Starmer's character as well.
And what is going to be the surprise announcement, obviously, because you know, it is in so many ways like 1997 all over again. And what the new Labour government did in 1997 was drop in the bombshell of Bank of England independence. Will there be, you know, as I say, Sam is trying to generate a huge amount of anticipation around the cabinet appointments, but most of them are expected. Will there be a surprise appointment or a surprise announcement?
We are seeing Lisa Nandy, which is a bit of a surprise in some ways because she was, of course, demoted or sidelined as part of the shadow cabinet, but then, of course, Sir Keir Starmer is saying that he does want to kind of reprioritise the Department for International Development. Sam Coates is there. Sam, what's happening?
Well, we're delivering you the excitement that Ed Vaizey wants, and here we have some genuine unexpected news. As you say, Lisa Nandy, her roles under Keir Starmer saw a gentle decline from Shadow Foreign Secretary straight after the failed bid for the leadership when Keir Starmer won to the Shadow Levelling Up Secretary, and then she ended up in the role of Shadow International Development Secretary. Of course, the Tories abolished the International Development Department, so the big question now... someone who is in charge of an entirely separate department. Lisa Nandy will be delighted to be doing the walk that you can see her do at the moment. I suspect she did not know, as recently as yesterday, whether or not she was going to be allowed to do this walk up Downing Street. The 44-year-old, as you say, sideline, not always
Nandi arrives. Nandi, Lisa Nandy.
in this direction, but as a broad smile on her face. Lisa Nandy, are you going to be a full cabinet member?
It's like she's Nepali. Lady.
We'll find out in just a few minutes as she goes in there. She is someone, she's a Manchester MP. She is someone who is not afraid to take on her enemies. She was not somebody who completely endeared herself.
Lisa Nandy, like she's Nepali, I think.
Shadow cabinet. There were whispers that they thought she might have been doing a little bit of briefing, but it looks now as if Keir Starmer's operation goes into government. Lisa Nandy is back in what for Labour and in terms of the Labour movement could be a really important job, which is international development, giving her the role of dishing out.
The lady is Nepali, I think.
Part of her
Nepali
will be in order just to smooth some of the tensions around the Middle East, and then she will be delighted to have done the walk she's just done. We've got another one. Sophie, more drama for Ed in the corner. It's Ed at Ian Murray. Now, Ian Murray has been, for many, many years, the shadow Scottish secretary, because he was the only Scottish figure in Labour politics. But now the 47-year-old looks as if he's defied some expectations that his job might be handed to Douglas Alexander, is able to do the walk up Downing Street, likely to become the Scotland secretary, going into number 10.
Footballers, I feel. You know, how many caps have they had? 44
I feel it's like the commentary on the coronation. And here comes the King of Spain, walking through the arches. It's a wonderful...
It's an important constitutional day for us, to be fair.
Sam can recognise them all, not like the Australian broadcasters who think it's precious part of the royal family.
Yeah, it's a good... Louise Hay, there we go. Louise Hay set to become, to continue with your age references, Ed, that you like so much, set to become the youngest member, potentially, of the new cabinet if she gets the job that she currently has in the shadow cabinet of Transport Secretary. Sam Coates is there. Sam.
Absolutely. Look, Louise Hay, or Lou Hay to her friends, is about to become instantly recognisable as Angela Rayner walks out as Deputy Prime Minister. How do you feel, Angela Rayner?
Oh.
She gives Sky a thumbs up.
Angelina.
She walks one way into the Foreign Office as Lou Hay does the walk up the pavement. Lou Hay has been the Shadow Transport Secretary. Broadspile, the 36-year-old, now going in. Some see her as the most left-wing member of this cabinet, perhaps alongside Angela Rayner. Doesn't pause for the cameras, but does swiftly and beaming go in. There was a rumour last September that Lou Hague might not remain in the shadow cabinet at the last big reshuffle, but no. There she makes it. She is going to be the architect, in all likelihood, of the plan to renationalise the railways that's in Labour's
Manchester থেকে আইছে নেপালি মেয়ে
railways back into public ownership as each of the franchises expire. But we'll pause there for... We have Lucy Powell. Lucy Powell, who is walking in now. She is a long time... she has been the shadow leader of the House, a long-time ally of Ed Miliband, somebody who has been at the heart of Labour politics for over a decade, was in the culture brief. Could she return to that now there's a vacancy with Thangam Debonair? In goes Lucy Powell.
ladies.
So there we have. And there we have Rachel Reeves standing inside number 11. Are you delighted to be the first Chancellor, first female Chancellor, Rachel Reeves? Rachel Reeves, who has made a study of women in economics and women in politics, now leaving number 10, walking across Downing Street. Are you pleased to be the first female Chancellor, Rachel Reeves? Keeping her gaze firmly, walking in, through Downing Street and down the road to the Foreign Office, where the cars for the waiting cabinet ministers are all parked as the procession continues. And we have another one. Looking right the way down Downing Street is another veteran of the Blair and the Brown years, and that is Liz Kendall.
We spoke to her on this programme this morning. She said she wasn't going to be drawn into whether or not she had any conversations about joining the cabinet. But there we have it, the woman who was the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, looking pretty pleased after getting the call up by the new incoming Prime Minister, Liz Kendall, walking up Downing Street there. And she's someone, as you say, Sam, who she wasn't an MP during the New Labour years, but she was president of the
Hello.
That's right. And she ended up running for the leadership. It was sort of on the wing, the modernising wing. This 53-year-old has been at the forefront of Labour politics for years and years. There she stopped to talk to the police officer on guard outside Downing Street before going in. This Leicester MP who at one point was the sort of talismanic figure for those on the Blairite right of the Labour Party. Now in the work and pensions brief, watch her in that job, dealing with welfare, dealing with the budget that many in the Labour Party realise is spiralling out of control, but attempts to squeeze will cause political pain. It's going to be a tough job if she ends up in government with the portfolio that she has.
I'm going to come in, Sam, because we do have some appointments that we can officially bring you now. Pat McFadden appointed as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. David Lammy, he is the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs. There had been some speculation he could be moved from that Foreign Office brief. Yvette Cooper is the Home Secretary and John Healey is the Defence Secretary. So 4 more appointments confirmed. And I can see, as I've been talking with those appointments as well, we do also have walking up Joe Stevens, who was the Shadow Wales Secretary.
That's right. Somebody who unionist first and foremost in that and
result out আর আগে রিজাইন করে নিছে তোমার হে
like so many other the jobs that
রিয়া ইয়া মাই গেছে হে বারে গেছে কি সিস্টেম
the front
আমরা তো ডেইল আমনি যায় না
she had in opposition now taking that role
আমরা দেশে এটা চাই কোন রকম তাকিয়ে দিতে পারে
Angela Smith for over a decade has been in as the shadow leader of the Lords for Labour walking up the pavement towards Downing Street. She has done so much work on behalf of Keir Starmer dealing with rebellions and Labour attempts to stop government legislation, now looks as if she's about to be rewarded. Is she about to become
এদের কাছ থেকে রাজনীতি শিক্ষা করি
in government around the
বাঙালি
cabinet table? That must be the presumption right now.
এই যে এত বড় একটা ইলেকশন হলো না একটা মারামারি না দরাদরি না ভোট চুরি না ব্যালট বক্স চুরি
Angela Smith, in all of the Corbyn years, seen as a moderate, steadying hand in the House of Lords through all of the turbulence when the last leader was running the Labour Party. Now looking like she's about to collect her reward for long service.
এটা দেখতেই কেন আমরা দেশে
cabinet job in Keir Starmer's new cabinet.
Sam, thank you very much indeed. Well,
ইলেকশন একটা আইলে তে দররে মাররে খাটরে
Yeah, I mean, by my count, we've only got, on the first round of cabinet jobs, we've only got Northern Ireland to go. And then we haven't seen Darren Jones yet, who we'd expect to be the number 2 in the Treasury, nor have we seen Nick Thomas-Simmons.
And we have seen Andrew Smith and Speaker
David Lammy becomes
the
a foreign
House of Lords,
secretary.
the soon-to-be defunct upper chamber. She, from our benches, she's very popular, very easy to deal with, very
experienced, popular, and of course the leader of the Lords is of course it's a cabinet position, and she, you know, she's loyal to the Labour Party, but she has to get the business done in the House of Lords. You have to be able to adopt an air of consensus in your approach to crossbenchers and Conservatives and so on.
Also worth noting that the new Prime Minister is sticking to his commitment to have at least a 50-50 balance in the cabinet.
I didn't know that. That's brilliant. I've always wished we'd had Tory Prime Ministers who'd done that, and that is brilliant news.
Yeah, certainly a good day for female representation, not the top job, but in the other jobs, certainly. Well, Keir Starmer made a big deal of stability being changed during the election campaign. He said, look, it's good to be boring. Actually, that's different than boring after the turbulence that we've had in our politics. And I guess he started in that vein, really, and keeping all the positions that he had in the shadow cabinet.
Yeah, but does that mean that it's going to be a woman who gets appointed as culture secretary? Otherwise, it throws the whole cosmos out of kilter.
Well, we think it might be Lucy Power, but I mean, by my count, 10 women have been appointed so far, and I think there have been 19 joined together. So
Lucy Power apparently didn't like the culture we had.
I've not heard that. How can you not like the culture?
It's the best one, isn't it? You get all those tickets.
It is the land of free tickets.
Well, there are those who say that Thangham Debonair is the first person in the brief, either for real or in shadow, who actually like culture.
Although she'd never been to a football match until she got 3 jobs, so it depends what culture you mean.
It depends if you count culture as football. Playing the cello is rather higher up on my sport.
I think this is basically the difference between you and me, where you think culture, I immediately think football, and you think classical music.
Yeah, and
media and sport, and some very big regulatory issues there, as well as the fun.
I think the digital's been taken off now.
Yeah, digital's
that's gone to
diesel, but nobody's quite clear where the Online Safety Act is.
But more seriously, you know, the culture sector is crying out for investment like every other sector. So things that look quite fun from opposition may seem a bit more challenging in government.
So we are waiting to see the news on the Culture Secretary. There's been no Nick Thomas-Simmons, as you said. We're also waiting for Emily Thornberry, Hilary Benn, Steve Reid and Darren James as well, who we are expecting to become the new number 2 at the Treasury. Let's cross back to Sam Coates, shall we? No surprises so far in the, I was going to say reshuffle, but it's not really a reshuffle, is it? The appointment of the new cabinet.
No slap on the wrist from Adam Bolton there. It is, of course, just, I suppose, the first set of appointments from Keir Starmer. Although it's a reshuffle, if you're comparing it to what he came into office with. Yvette Cooper appointed Home Secretary. Even though some of those early arrivals came out of order, it does seem as if Keir Starmer has stuck precisely to the portfolios that the people around him had in opposition, transferring them person for person, including David Lammy, who's just been confirmed as Foreign Secretary,
Theo Ulby, hi.
Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. All of those, the jobs that they had in opposition, now transferring So really, we could only get 2 surprises. Who's going to be the Culture Secretary, and who had that slightly nebulous Cabinet Office job inhabited, I think it was Paymaster General, Shadow Paymaster General, which was inhabited by Jonathan Ashworth, who was defeated by an independent overnight. It appears that there is a tiny break in the proceedings. There's nobody in the corner of Downing Street coming through the gate just yet. But as you say, the big names that we're looking for now are Steve Reed, the kind of one of the founders of Labour Together, who was the Environment Secretary dealing with sewage, Darren Jones, who was Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, in charge of money and doling out departmental cash, and Emily Thornberry, Shadow Attorney General, a big figure in our politics, for some people Marmite, for some people a pugnacious figure on the public stage. Will those figures come in and get the jobs that they had? That's the question that we're asking at the moment.
It is the question that we will keep asking until we get those answers. Sam, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's take a breath, shall we? Because we've had a lot of news happening in the last hour. So let's look at those cabinet appointments so far in a little bit more detail at this point. The first person through the gates of Downing Street, Angela Rayner, appointed as the Secretary of State for Levelling Up. Also, of course, she is the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner there. Rachel Reeves has become the UK's first ever female Chancellor, the first time a woman has held that job in the 803-year history of the role, while David Lammy has been confirmed as the Foreign Secretary. There had been a little bit of speculation about whether he'd be kept in that post. He has. Pat McFadden, the new Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. He will, I'm sure, become the new Prime Minister's Mr. Fix-It, the most influential politician you never heard of, someone who is believed to be part of the decision-making quad that Sam Coates has been talking about. Plus, Yvette Cooper, perhaps a more familiar face to many of you, she has become the Home Secretary. Let's have a little look now, shall we, at some of the other roles that are still being filled. Oh, that's it. There we go. Those are the main ones that we wanted to bring you. If we were going to rattle through the wall, I guess we would be here all day.
Yeah, it is very exciting. There is no, I mean, I was never in the cabinet, but there is nothing like being a minister if you're passionate about kind of making change.
5 minutes.
I'm finished. I was just thinking about David Lammy, who I've known for quite a long time, you know, going into the Foreign Secretary, and regardless of your politics, and it sounds a bit trite and perhaps even Westminster Village, say, you know, these guys deserve it. 13 years in opposition is no fun at all. And I can imagine them going into their departments now and thinking, you know, we've got a job to do and we want to do it. Having said that, of course, so I'm really pleased for them regardless, but this is a great day and fun and engaging, and it's a big change. But I think this is a government that's going to find it's going to get into trouble. That's not a criticism, quite quickly. I think it's going to be interesting, the kind of issues that kind of start to bump up against it very, very quickly, and start to kind of, you know, you're starting to
but they
feel
are
a bit of the tree
predictable at least, and there is, of course, not in the cabinet, but you know, she was mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The mighty Sue Gray was set
viewers, thank you for watching my video. Please subscribe my channel. Thank you. We'll see you again in another live.
Which is quite interesting that it's not been done by civil servants.